Bonjour et bienvenue sur ma chaîne. Je m'appelle Renaissance and welcome to my channel. So much has happened since my last video. I don't really have to explain because, hold on, my hair is weird. If you are watching this, then you're probably on social media and you probably already know what's been going on. And also, it is what we're kind of going to be talking about today, but not really. So, yeah, this is getting messy, so I'm just going to get into what I wanted to talk about today. My YouTube channel for me has kind of just been this continuous thought log of myself over the years, and I've never really gotten into being a YouTuber, even though I've tried so many times. That's just probably not what this is going to be. But one thing that has stayed consistent is that I've always talked about things that I've wanted to talk about and things that I wanted to just kind of document what my thoughts were on it, or just what I'm interested in talking about. And that has changed over the years. And most recently, the most recent thing that I've been really into talking about has been French and French language and linguistics. And I still love talking about it. It's still one of my favorite subjects. I would love to make a video on do support and what that means in English and how's that translated. But one thing that, if you follow me on my Instagram in particular or any of my other social medias, one thing that I'm really talking about is internet real estate and what are we using our platforms to talk about, what are we sharing on our platforms, what conversation are we having. And I speak a lot in my community. I've given more speeches in the month of June than I have in some years. I have consistently been giving speeches in my community over the years for about 3 years now. One, I even vlogged on this channel. You can look it up. I think it was last year's, the Women's March of 2019. I vlogged me doing a speech there, and that was not the first time and not the last time that I gave a public speech. And so I say all of this, I do all of this, I repost on my Twitter and my Instagram, but I have a platform here that I can use to share this. And also, when people hear me speak in public, they only get to hear me speak once, really. And two, I'm often limited in time, and that being said, I don't have the opportunity to reinforce some of the statements that I make in some speeches. Of course, the center of my politics has been and always will be intersectional feminism, specifically Black trans women, and more explicitly, I think, for me, and for everyone, if you're looking for a place to center your politics that's the most inclusive, is poor Black trans women. That being said, that is also not what this video is about. But what I'm trying to say and what I'm trying to get at is that although I love talking about French and linguistics and gay stuff, right now I'm trying to use every inch of my internet real estate, of my online platforms, to have a conversation, to educate. I am not accepting the emotional burden, the intellectual burden of trying to justify my existence. So anything that I post, anytime that I open up for a conversation or for dialogue, one, I'm not going to debate my existence or my experiences with anyone. This is a reality that I and many other people face, and you don't need a New York Times article for you to validate that experience, for you to listen to that, or for you to believe that this is how we feel and how I can only speak for myself, but how I live. And any other Black voice, any other Black woman that you listen to, trust their experience because it's often underrepresented. So even though this is a reality that I live and so many other people live in their own versions, you're not going to get the white man's approval on this because he built the systems that made these realities so hard to live. So I'm not going to debate with anyone on any of this stuff because this is my life and I'm not going to try and justify the worth of my life to anyone. I'm also only going to be engaging in ways that still preserve my own mental health, inner peace. Of course, some of that is inevitably going to be compromised given the topics that I'm going to be talking about, given how emotional and personal these things can get, and just given the society that we live in, being Black and living in an anti-Black world takes a toll on you mentally and emotionally. And so that is kind of a given in this case. I am sacrificing some of that peace, some of that health in order to have these conversations, but I'm not going to exhaust myself with this. There are so many other resources. There are a number of voices. There are, like, Google, you're already on YouTube if you're watching this. Like, I do not need to emotionally and mentally and intellectually exhaust myself to try and prove to anyone, Black or otherwise, what's going on living as basically as just who I am and what my politics are and kind of what's going on from another perspective that's often either tokenized or misrepresented, underrepresented, and just not heard. So I could talk about this forever. I have a timer for 30 minutes. I'm already like 9 minutes in. I don't want this to be really, really long. And I could talk about this forever, and also like storage reasons. Anyways, so, and like editing, some of this might be taking out. I don't know, like, fuck it. If I want to post a 30-minute video, I'm gonna post a 30-minute video. Anyway, so today I am going to be talking about, in this video, I'm going to be talking about white fragility and my experience with white fragility. Hold on, I forgot the name of the author who coined the term. Let me look her up real quick. Yes, she does have her PhD. So Dr. Robin DiAngelo, she is a white woman. She's an author. She wrote the book on white fragility, and she also claimed that term. And there are many videos, many interviews. She's obviously very popular given the current situation. So there are a lot of interviews that you can watch with her that are coming out right now. And there are interviews dating over the years from when her book came out, I want to say in 2018, but could be wrong on that. But white fragility is not something that she created. It's a term that she coined. It put a name to something that has always existed, and something that has happened to me a lot. People who are white and have white fragility probably aren't going to enjoy hearing about this from a Black person. That's kind of the issue. So if this is your first time hearing about this and you get defensive over what I'm saying, then I recommend hearing it from her, who is a white woman, and hopefully she can help guide you in a way that I can't. But this is the tea. This is what we're talking about. And this is also the first video that I wanted to make on talking about Black issues, because like the amuse-bouche, we need to get something straight here. White fragility is the instant defensiveness to being held accountable, particularly by people of color, and applicable to me as a Black person and Black people in general. And for me, and in my experience, and this is kind of a general narrative, is that people in the West, in white-centered, Eurocentric societies and cultures such as the United States and Europe, as well as countries that have been colonized and still suffer from the repercussions of colonization from Europeans. Where is it now? Oh, there is this thing where people are more offended by being called racist than actually being racist. And this is an issue for many reasons. One, everyone is racist. Racism is the status quo, and an issue in education system, in our culture, and in our media is that we only see like people in white hoods with swastikas tattooed on them, burning crosses, like shooting black people. We only see them as racist, and that is not the definition of racism. It's an extreme form. It's not racist, don't get me wrong. It is very, very racist. But painting that as the only form of racism, or saying I don't hire black people, or I don't sell houses to black people, we see that, and in our minds we know that that's racist. But then what that ends up doing is, because we're only focusing on the extreme, we're not talking about the number of microaggressions that lead to that, and that normalize that. We don't talk about the layers, the nuances. It's not only a system of belief that is internalized, it's also how our government is formed, how banks operate. Everything is racist. And on top of that, everything is anti-black, and proximity to blackness will determine the level of racism that you face. Because if you're living in a white supremacist society, which Eurocentric societies and cultures do, such as the United States, where whiteness is the supreme, it is seen as the superior, it is seen as the default, and then when you deviate towards that, then that is pushing you away from proximity to whiteness and into proximity to blackness, and then that is where racism starts to affect other communities and cultures within the United States. And if across the world, if you are a dark-skinned person, if you're darker in even your community of color, whether that's Latinos or Asians or Southeast Asians or Middle Eastern, if you are darker or even black mixed in with those communities, you're going to be treated worse. And the darker you are, the worse you get treated in a white supremacist society. And that's, like, it sucks, it's unfortunate, it's messed up, but that's the reality, and that's the status quo, and that's what keeps white people comfortable. These are things that, while are disadvantages for people of color and for black people, you can't say that something is a disadvantage for one group without also recognizing it as an advantage for other group. White people continually profit and are the beneficiaries of these racist systems. And in order for black people and people of color and indigenous people to survive living in these societies, living in these cultures, living under these structures, and living with racist people, you have to internalize that to a degree. And you have to assimilate to the culture, because if you're constantly in the opposition, and not only is, say, your neighbor, but your bank and your government and the police and textbooks and teachers are against you, you will not survive. It is taxing to a degree that is unlivable. And so instead of fighting every single instance of racism, you internalize it, or you stop speaking out, you become complacent, and as long as you are able to make it to the next day, as long as you're able to still get a job, whether or not you're paid for the same amount of work that your white coworker does, if you're still able to get a home to protect yourself or your family or your loved ones or, you know, whoever you may be responsible for, including and outside of yourself, then you're going to do that, because at the end of the day, it is about survival. If you're not white, then the mere color of your skin, your ethnicity, your features are always going to inhibit or be a detriment to how well you can survive. And so internalizing this is how people of color continue to survive in the United States and in Western-centered societies. That being said, if white people always tried to combat things that benefited them, that's not going to be great for them. And if it's really easy to notice something, like a needle that's constantly poking at your side, it's really easy to notice that. If you're getting a back massage for your entire life, you're probably not going to ask to not have a back massage, right? And that's kind of what white privilege is. And, you know, white people, even if they have good intentions, even if are seen on the surface level as really sweet, are still benefiting from systemic racism, their friends' racism, their parents' internalized racism, and also they're still interacting with media that is going to perpetrate racial stereotypes that they are then going to internalize and then subconsciously put out into the world. I'm not saying that every single person, every single white person, every single non-black person is like saying, I hate black people. Honestly, not that many people would admit to saying, I hate black people, if asked the question. Some will, some do, unprovoked, but that I wouldn't say is... Saying I hate black people isn't the status quo. But being racist, and being okay with living in a racist society, is the status quo. And there's this dangerous conflation that people have with these two things that needs to be separated, because a lot of people will perpetrate racism without knowing that that's what they're doing, because it's so ingrained in what we're taught and the media that we see from when we're born, and in the classrooms, and from our parents, and the music that we listen to, and not seeing black people on Disney Channel growing up. All of those things are going to condition us to think a certain way. They all add up. You can't remove or change one part and think that that's enough. And so, getting back to the root of it, white fragility is that moment when people are more offended at being called racist than the thing that they did that made someone call them a racist in the first place. And what I'm trying to say is that there's no use in being offended at being called a racist, because you already are. Whether someone has told you or not, you are racist. You have internalized racism. There are probably things you've done in your past that you may not have thought were explicitly racist, and were. And some of them are so normalized that looking back, you may not even be able to find them. You don't have to say the N-word to be racist. You could say that you've never said the N-word, and that doesn't exempt you from having some sort of racist belief. And it's not that it's okay, but I don't need 25 text messages from my non-black friends saying I'm so sorry if I was ever racist to you. Because you probably were, at some point. I didn't stop being friends with you then. I have those experiences. And there are things that you need to work through on your own, right? Like, if I've ever been harmed, like, I'm not an insecure person. I also know I have an extreme sense of self-preservation. So, like, I pick a lot of battles, but I pick and choose my battles. And so, this isn't a time for you to say, I'm sorry for being racist, I won't be racist in the future. You will be racist in the future. It'll be a long time for people to stop being racist. What needs to happen, instead of when saying what you said, what you did, whatever thing is racist? Instead of being defensive, listen to what they're saying. When someone says, what you're doing is making me feel invalidated, making me feel small, and especially if you're someone who right now is not black and is saying that you are standing with the Black Lives Matter movement, and you have it in your bio or your profile picture, and then someone says that what you're doing is making them feel like you're anti-black, or you're not showing that their life matters, it's not the time to say, oh, but I've never said the N-word, and I talked to my mom about racism, and I donate here and here and here, and I have signed this petition. Because you can hold every single door open for a black person that you see, but if you're invalidating a black life, you are invalidating a black life, and that is something that is racist. And so, why should there be a trade-off of accepting one racist act for a list of 5 quote-unquote non-racist acts? Why can't you just not do a single racist act? It's important to just listen and then adapt and change, especially if you're not black. And this is including Middle Eastern people, Asian people, Latinos. I'm talking about non-black people. White fragility is something that is on the white community a lot because they have the most privilege. But I see this from Latinos. I'm an Afro-Latina myself. I have a lot of Mexican friends. I live in a predominantly Latinx community, like my neighborhood community is predominantly Latinx. The schools that I went to had a lot of Latinx students, like very visually Latinx, and yet I still had to face with anti-blackness and this idea that they couldn't be racist because they're Mexican, when that's not the reality, and they can still be anti-black. And these are things based off of my experiences. This isn't story time with Renaissance, because not everyone is going to relate to that exact story, but people who know what I'm talking about know what I'm talking about right now. Like, let me tell you, not pulling this out of my butt, not the only one who's had to go through this. Like, this is a thing that happens. Stop being offended at being called racist. Just stop doing the thing that people called you racist for. And frankly, I don't care how you feel about being called racist, or what those acts meant to you, or what your headspace was, or what you were going through when you did that, or who in your life said that it was okay, because guess what? Myself, or another black person, is saying that it's not okay. And for me, it's more important to make the most uncomfortable feel comfortable than sacrifice someone else's comfort for someone who's already comfortable. Right? Like, why would I protect the already comfortable over the uncomfortable? Because that doesn't make sense. And be okay with that and feel okay with that. So, listen. Like, genuinely listen. If you're saying Black Lives Matter, then when a black person, specifically black women, more specifically black trans women, tell you that what you're doing is a microaggression or offensive or something that's very keen to that ear because we have those layered discriminations and identities, it's not your job to tell us that we shouldn't feel uncomfortable as black women. It's your job to listen and to change. And that is what needs to happen. Because a lot of people are watching videos, a lot of people are reading, a lot of people are having conversations, but what are you learning? Are you just saying that, oh, I've heard this black perspective, so I can't be racist? Or are you actually making the steps to change those racist acts that we are calling people out on? Because yes, of course, at the end of the day, the goal is to end police brutality and for black people to stop being killed for no reason besides existing and being black. Like, really, really down at the end of the day, that is what we're talking about. But there are other things that happen in our lives, in society, in media and culture, that lead up to Black death, that normalize dehumanizing black people in other ways, that by the time there is police brutality, it's so normalized that police think it's okay to kill black people because black people have been dehumanized that entire police lives through media, through music, through other means. So, talking about this, no one is exempt from talking about racism. I have a feeling I filmed maybe for 40 minutes, and I have a feeling only 15 of it was actually recorded. I hate not having a viewfinder. If anyone wants to send me enough money to buy a camera with a viewfinder, please do. Okay, so anyways, as I was saying, I don't know how much this got recorded. I hope a lot of it, maybe some of it, I don't know, chopped up, whatever. But all I want to say is, 1, I'm definitely going to be making more pro-black videos. 2, also might be making other videos, because guess what? I'm a black woman and I get to do that, which is pretty fun right now. I kind of get to do whatever I want, and white people, you just gotta sit there and take it and not say anything. So that's really fun for me. Might make another French Friday video. Who knows? I still really like talking about French. It's not the most important thing to be talking about right now, and there are a lot of world problems. But I also love a little self-care, and also a little dash of levity. A little dash, because let me tell you, I've gone down the rabbit hole a couple of times already, and when I focus too much on the world problems, it makes me feel insignificant and really depressed, and then I don't feel motivated to do anything. So if every once in a while I talk about things or do things that to me remind me of a little spark of joy in my own life, I'm gonna take that opportunity, whether you like it or not. So right now is the time for black people to make themselves as comfortable as possible, and for white people, for a moment, for a split moment, live in your own discomfort for a little bit. Because guess what? Black people have been oppressed for 400 years, and you being uncomfortable for 4 weeks doesn't really add up, now does it? Exactly. So I will see you in the next video, and I hope you guys have a lovely day, evening, morning, whatever. Okay, bisous. Ciao!